Welcome to A Sound Constitution here on CHLY 101.7 FM. This is a show where we focus on health topics that are important to our community. This year's team is made up of 6 VIU nursing students. Our goal? To demystify health issues and address common misconceptions by sharing evidence-informed information from a variety of reliable sources. All information provided on our show will be available in our show notes, on our Facebook and Instagram pages. We want to remind listeners that the information presented in this show is for educational purposes only. It does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about what's being discussed, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook at A Sound Constitution, on Instagram at CHLY, A Sound Constitution, all one word, or email us at asoundconstitution@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we're looking forward to this journey with you.
We begin today by acknowledging that we are gathered on the unceded and traditional lands of the Nanaimo people, whose rich cultural history continues to inspire and guide us. Our broadcast also extends into the territories of the Coatsan and the Sliaman nations. We are deeply thankful for the Nanaimo people's enduring connection to this land, and for the opportunity to live, learn, and work here today. We make this acknowledgement with a commitment to honor and respect Indigenous cultures, traditions, and histories, and to actively participate in the ongoing work of truth and reconciliation. For more information on the ongoing reconciliation work and land acknowledgement practices of the Nanaimo people, we invite you to visit our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages.
Welcome back for the second half of our season. I'm Anna. We're back with an emergency focus. Following a summer marked by devastating wildfires across Vancouver Island, the need for robust emergency planning has never been clearer. Picture this: the ground shakes, or the sky fills with smoke, or the water rises. It might sound dramatic, but here on central Vancouver Island, it's real. Fires, floods, earthquakes, not if, but when. And the question is, are you ready? Today, 6 of us will take you through what can happen, what already has, and what you can do to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your neighbors. We'll back it up with data and real resources. Just wanted to remind you, you're listening to A Sound Constitution, and I'm going to pass it on to Brienne.
What a summer we just had. It really felt like one for the record books. Fires were everywhere, and for so many people across Vancouver Island, it was a season of smoke, alerts, and uncertainty. But while wildfires grabbed the headlines, they're really just one part of a much bigger picture. If we step back, we can see that our region, Nanaimo and the Mid-Island more broadly, sits in the middle of several overlapping risks. Fires are immediate, but there are also other threats like floods and earthquakes that can be just as damaging, if not more so. And unlike the short-term scramble of a fire, some of these events, like a major earthquake, could reshape our communities for decades. Let's start with earthquakes, because that's one of the biggest risks that sometimes gets overlooked. Nanaimo is right along the Cascadia subduction zone. This is a fault line running just offshore, stretching from Northern California all the way up to Vancouver Island. Scientists know that this fault is capable of producing a truly massive quake, something over magnitude 9.0. To put that in perspective, a quake that size would release hundreds of times more energy than the 2024 earthquake that struck Taiwan. And this isn't just science fiction or something we imagine. We already have proof in our own history. In 1946, Vancouver Island was rocked by a magnitude 7.3 earthquake. That event caused major structural damage, even though the island was much less developed at the time. And if we go further back in time, we know from Indigenous oral histories and geological records that the last full rupture of the Cascadia Fault happened in the year 1700. That quake sent a tsunami all the way across the Pacific, hitting the coast of Japan. When we look at the patterns, researchers say these megaquakes happen every 300 to 600 years. Which means, like it or not, we're in the window where another one could happen at any time. Now, while earthquakes are the sleeping giant, let's not forget the disasters we see every single year, like wildfires. Just this past August, the Mount Underwood wildfire near Port Alberni burned over 3,500 hectares. For context, that's about the size of 6,500 football fields. Evacuation alerts even reached the edge of town, reminding us how quickly these fires can move from being out there to being right at our doorstep. The numbers really tell the story. According to the BC Wildfire Service, our summer fire seasons are now about 5 weeks longer than they were just 20 years ago. That's not a small shift. That's an entire extra month of hot, dry conditions when a single spark can turn into a raging blaze. And while lightning still does start many of the fires, more than 40% of them in our coastal fire center are caused by human activity. That means things like campfires, cigarettes, or machinery. In 2023 alone, Vancouver Island saw 212 wildfires, and over half of those, 56%, were within 2 kilometers of a community. That puts thousands of homes and families directly in harm's way. And then we can't forget about flooding. If you've lived here for any length of time, you probably remember the atmospheric rivers of November 2021. That series of storms dumped so much rain that it washed out highways, flooded entire communities, and cut off major supply routes. Even here on Vancouver Island, parts of the Trans-Canada Highway were shut down. People suddenly realized how fragile our supply chains are. Things we take for granted, like going to the store for groceries, filling up the gas tank, or picking up prescriptions, became unpredictable almost overnight. Researchers at UVic later called it a climate disaster with compounding infrastructure failure. That's a mouthful, but what it really means is that when one system breaks, like a highway or a bridge, it doesn't stop there, it ripples outward. Trucks can't deliver food, pharmacies can't restock medications, gas stations run dry. So what starts as just a flood quickly becomes a problem for healthcare, for families, and for the economy. Flood risk is not just a past event, it's a growing concern. The Regional District of Nanaimo has already mapped high-risk flood zones across low-lying areas. Places like Chase River, Cinnabar Valley, and parts of downtown Parksville are especially vulnerable. Combine that with more frequent atmospheric rivers and stronger storms, and flash flooding is going to remain a central island issue. So when we look at the big picture, what do we see? 3 main threats: wildfires, floods, and earthquakes. Each of them is dangerous on its own, obviously, but the real concern is that these risks can overlap. For example, imagine a wildfire evacuation happening at the same time as a major storm system. Or imagine an earthquake that damages bridges, making it impossible for fire crews or ambulances to reach people when they're needed most. Let's look at some of the probabilities. The Geological Survey of Canada says there is about a 30% chance of a damaging crustal earthquake hitting Vancouver Island in the next 50 years. For the giant subduction zone quake, the chance is lower, about 10 to 15% over the same time frame, but if that one hits, it would be catastrophic. On the wildfire side, the data is already clear. Fire seasons are longer, fires are larger, and most of them are happening close to communities. And on the flood side, we've already lived through the wettest November on record during the 2021 to 2022 rainy season. Climate change is stacking the odds against us. So what do we do with all of this information? Honestly, it can feel overwhelming, but there are steps we can take starting at the individual and household level, and those steps really do make a difference. For wildfires, it begins with something called Fire Smart. This is a program that gives practical advice on how to reduce fire risk around your home. Things like clearing away brush and dead branches, moving firewood at least 10 meters from the house, and choosing non-flammable materials for roofing. Even small actions like cleaning out your gutters can prevent embers from turning into house fires. For flooding, the most basic step is to know if you're in a flood-prone area. The Regional District of Nanaimo has maps, and if your home is at risk, it's worth thinking about things like sump pumps, sandbags, and making sure your insurance is up to date. But preparedness isn't just about the building itself, it's about what you'd do if the roads were cut off. Having a week's worth of food, water, and medications at home can make all the difference. And for earthquakes, it comes down to planning and practice. Every household should have an emergency kit with flashlights, batteries, first aid supplies, and enough food and water for at least 72 hours. Just as important is practicing what to do. Drop cover and hold on during a quake, and knowing how to safely turn off gas and water lines afterward. It might feel unnecessary, but when the ground shakes, muscle memory kicks in faster than panic. The point is, while the risks can seem huge, the response starts small. It starts with us, what we do in our homes, on our properties, and in our communities. If enough of us take these steps, the whole region becomes stronger, more resilient, and better prepared for whatever nature throws at us next. So as we look ahead, let's not think of fire season, or flood season, or earthquake risk as separate issues. They're all part of the same picture. And that picture is one of a region that's beautiful and vibrant, but also vulnerable. The more we understand that, the better we can prepare, and the more likely we are to bounce back when the next big event comes.
Thanks, Brienne, for giving us a great overview of the risks we could face in an emergency. Now, let's talk about how to be ready, specifically the 7-day emergency kit recommended by Prepared BC. Prepared BC's guidance is based on the reality that in a disaster, services like grocery stores, pharmacies, and even banks could be delayed for up to a week. That's why having a kit that sustains you and your household for 7 days is so important. Think of it as giving yourself a safety net during those critical first days. Let's walk through what this kit includes. Water. This is non-negotiable. You'll need at least 4 liters per person per day. Over 7 days, that comes out to a minimum of 28 liters. It's heavier than you think, so plan how you'll store it safely. Water is life. Without it, even a few days can become dangerous. Food. Non-perishable items are key here. Things with a shelf life of 12 months or more. Canned goods, pasta, rice, beans, or freeze-dried meals all work well. And don't forget to rotate your supplies twice a year. It may seem like a lot of work, but keeping your food fresh means you can actually rely on it when the time comes. Lighting. Power outages are almost guaranteed during certain emergencies. A battery-powered flashlight or hand crank flashlight is essential. Add a headlamp if you want to keep your hands free. It makes a huge difference when you're trying to cook, read, or navigate in the dark. LED lights are best because they can last longer and use less power as well. So that brings me on to my next point, power. Phones, radios, and other small electronics can keep you connected to the outside world. Include a power bank in your kit, ideally one that can recharge with solar power or a vehicle charger. Staying informed can save lives, and keeping communication open is part of that. First aid. Your health matters. Make sure you have your prescription medications included because pharmacies might be closed or hard to reach. A standard first aid kit is essential too. Bandages, antiseptics, pain relievers, and anything you know you'll need. Hygiene. It's easy to overlook, but personal hygiene is critical during an emergency. Include hand sanitizer, menstrual products, and sanitation tablets for water purification. Staying clean helps prevent illness, and that's just as important as surviving the initial event. Cash. Technology can fail. ATMs and electronic payment systems might be down, so keep small bills on hand. Having cash ready means you can access essentials without delay. Even a small amount can make a big difference in the early days. Lastly, comfort items. And here's something we often forget: emotional survival. Include a deck of cards, a book, or even a small stuffed toy. These items might seem minor, but having a couple of them can provide comfort and mental stability, especially if you have children. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds expensive and overwhelming. Do I really need to buy all of this at once? The answer is no. You can build your kit slowly, one item at a time. Even a partial kit improves your chances of staying safe. BC Emergency Health Services says that any preparation, even small steps, significantly increases survival odds. But having a kit is only part of the equation. Knowing where to get reliable, up-to-date information is equally important. In BC, resources like Prepared BC, local government websites, and apps like BC Emergency Info provides trusted guidance during an emergency. Following these official sources ensures that you're not misled by rumors or misinformation. Think of it this way: preparedness is both physical and informational. Your kit covers your basic survival needs: food, water, light, and health, while trusted sources guide your decisions and actions. Together, they give you the best chance to weather the storm safely. Even starting small can have a big impact. Maybe today you check your water supplies, tomorrow add a few canned meals, next week make sure your flashlights works and batteries are fresh. Little by little, your kit grows, and with it, your confidence in being ready. And remember, preparedness isn't just for yourself. It's for your family, your neighbors, and your community. When more people are ready, everyone is safer. So take a look around your home and start imagining what your 7-day kit could look like. Think water, food, power, first aid, hygiene, cash, and comfort items. Even a small step can make a difference. Coming up, Sophia is going to explore how local communities organize to support each other during these emergencies, how you can stay connected, informed, and ready to help when the unexpected happens.
So far, we've talked about kits, plans, but here's the big question. When the water's rising or the smoke rolls in, where do you go? And who's actually there to help? That's why we want to tell you about the teams and organizations that will be your go-tos for Central Island emergency support. These are the local organizations that show up when it counts. Some are official, some are volunteer-based, but all of them are a part of our safety net. When disaster strikes, where can you turn for the information that matters? BC Wildfire Dashboard has daily updates on fire status, evacuation zones, and air quality. Many apps pull data from them, but the BC Wildfire Dashboard is the primary source. Drive BC and Emergency Info BC. They provide information on road closures, detours, and bridge outages. These are especially vital for island communities. During the 2021 floods, Drive BC updates were the only way that evacuees knew which direction was safe. Island Health has rapid response teams to coordinate mobile clinics and emergency mental health support. If you're immunocompromised, elderly, or on medications like insulin, this could save your life. Now let's talk about some reception centers in Nanaimo. We have Beban Park Rec Center, located at 2300 Bowen Road in Nanaimo. Next is Bowen Park Complex, located at 500 Bowen Road, Nanaimo. Then there's Oliver Woods Community Center, located at 6000 Oliver Road in Nanaimo. And the last that we'll share with you today is the Nanaimo Aquatic Center. They're located at 741 3rd Street in Nanaimo. These are your designated reception centers. They're pre-activated by the City of Nanaimo and Emergency Management BC. They provide temporary shelter, basic first aid, meals and water, emotional support, access to emergency services registration, and help with reconnecting families. And you may be wondering, yes, they are wheelchair accessible and often partner with Island Health to coordinate care for those with mobility issues or medical needs. So what about access to food? Loaves and Fishes. They operate 7 days a week, have multiple depots, and require no paperwork and no proof of income. Loaves and Fishes is already pre-positioning food across the city. So when trucks stop rolling, they're ready. In a disaster, they deploy mobile hampers and coordinate with the city to provide food security at reception centers. They also operate out of churches, schools, and rec centers, so your closest depot is probably within walking distance. What if you want to feel more prepared but don't know where to start? Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Programs, known as NEPPs, offer free workshops, printed guides, and help you set up street-by-street mutual aid. They're run by the Regional District of Nanaimo. NEPPs help neighbors prepare together before the disaster strikes. These are hyper-local networks, street or apartment-based, where residents coordinate who has what: first aid skills, water filters, radios, generators, and more. NEPPs also host free workshops and provide printed emergency plans that are tailored for your area. During the Light and Fire, this kind of neighbor-to-neighbor organizing was credited with saving lives. Another vital resource during emergencies is the Nanaimo Search and Rescue. This is an all-volunteer crew that's been saving lives since 1976. From evacuation assistance in floods to missing person searches, the Nanaimo Search and Rescue works under the BC Emergency Program Act and coordinates directly with the RCMP and local fire departments. They train for rope rescues, flood and water operations, lost person behavior, and emergency communications. The Nanaimo Search and Rescue also helps identify at-risk zones and provide boots-on-the-ground intel during disasters. So, what about accessing mental health support? Psychological first aid is available online for free from the Red Cross and Island Health. It's not just about physical survival. Emotional resilience is key in a crisis. Another resource is the Island Crisis Care Society. Disasters hit the hardest when you're already struggling. The Island Crisis Care Society provides emergency shelters like Samaritan House and Crescent House, as well as transitional housing, outreach nursing, referrals to detox and mental health support. During a disaster, the Island Crisis Care Society shifts into emergency stabilization mode, helping unhoused folks access food, shelter, and crisis medical support. Next, we'd like to touch on faith-based organizations. Churches, mosques, temples, they're not just places of worship. In an emergency, they're community anchors. Many already serve as informal shelters or food distribution hubs. During the 2021 wildfire season, church kitchens in Merritt and Kamloops fed hundreds of evacuees. Here in Nanaimo, groups like the Salvation Army and local Sikh temples have been approached to join the community recovery committees. Next, I'd like to touch on some digital emergency tools. Social media may be one of the last things on your mind in a crisis, but it could be your lifeline. On Facebook and Instagram, you can follow Emergency Info BC for provincial evacuation alerts, Prepared BC for tips, templates, and updates surrounding emergencies, and Drive BC for road closures, live camera footage, and detours. If you're not on social media, you should bookmark the page gov.bc.ca/emergency and save their offline PDFs now in case you need to use them in the future. So while you build your kit and prepare for the worst, remember, you are not alone. These organizations are already preparing behind the scenes. Since so many of these incredible organizations are run by volunteers, we'd like to put a call out to you. If you've got the time, skills, or a strong back, sign up. Volunteer before the storm hits, because you might be the one who makes the difference. If you're interested in learning more about the organizations or resources that were shared today, check out our show notes on Facebook and Instagram. But unfortunately, these systems alone aren't enough. Next up, we'll talk about why some people are still left behind.
And you're listening to A Sound Constitution on 107.1 CHLY, and we're talking about disasters and how you can be prepared. Pass it on to you, Finley.
It's easy to just say, be prepared. But the truth is, most of us don't live in a world where we can just sprint to Costco, drop $400 on gear, and call it a day. Let's start with the biggest barrier, cost. According to the Red Cross, a ready-made 72-hour emergency kit runs between $250 and $400. That's a grocery bill, a power bill, even a good chunk of a rent payment for some households. So it's no surprise that preparedness ends up feeling more like a luxury than something attainable, especially for people on fixed income, disability assistance, or minimum wage. But here's the good news. Prepared BC and many local emergency coordinators now say you don't need to do it all at once. You can build your kit slowly, one item a week from dollar stores, thrift shops, and even your own cupboards. But what are the first priorities? Water, light, medications. Make sure you start there. Add things like shelf-stable foods, a crank flashlight, or maybe even a solar power bank if it's in the budget. Label your medication bottles and ask your pharmacist about emergency refills or blister packs. Next, mobility and access. In the 2021 atmospheric river, many seniors and people with disabilities simply couldn't evacuate. Roads washed out, transit stopped, and according to information from Seniors Advocate BC, with all the chaos going on, even some of the folks who wanted to evacuate simply couldn't. That's why neighborhood emergency programs, the NEPPs, and local fire departments are pushing buddy systems. Team up with one or two neighbors, trade phone numbers, spare keys, maybe agree to check up on each other after a quake or a storm. Preparedness is personal, but surviving, that's social. 3. Language barriers. Now, imagine the alert goes out, but you don't understand it. About 1 in 5 people on Vancouver Island speak a first language other than English, according to the BC government. It's an emergency. Translation can literally save lives. Prepared BC now offers guidelines in more than 10 languages: Punjabi, Cantonese, Tagalog, Farsi, Arabic, and more. Emergency Info BC also shares updates with clear icons and plain language across social media. But let's be honest, it's still up to us to share that information with the people around us. If your neighbor, coworker, or grandparents might not get alerts easily, check in, translate, summarize, write it down. Preparedness isn't a plan, it's a conversation. Next, digital dependence. Here's another blind spot: our total dependence on devices. Every plan assumes that your phone will work, that the grid is live, the Wi-Fi is fine, and that your data plan's paid. But when the power goes out, your phone becomes a brick. So the experts say, go analog. Print your emergency plan. Write down phone numbers, addresses, meetup spots. Keep a small paper map of your neighborhood. Yes, the kind that folds. It feels old school, but after a quake, that's gold. And if you got kids, involve them. Draw the route to your meeting spot, or write your out-of-town contacts and put them on the fridge. Next is social isolation and mental health. Preparedness also means thinking about who might be left behind. People living alone, especially elders, may not hear alerts or have anyone to check in on them. The Regional District of Nanaimo's Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Plan encourages each household to identify who on their street might need a little extra support. Even a knock on a door can make all the difference. And we can't forget emotional preparedness. For anyone who's lived through wildfires, floods, or residential displacements, even talking about disaster prep, that can be triggering. So it feels heavy. Pause, break it into steps, do it with a friend. Trauma-informed preparedness matters because fear shuts down that planning. And that leads us to action steps. How do you turn all this talk into action? Start small. Download the Household Emergency Plan at preparedbc.ca/household. Do it over dinner or while you're charging your phone. Then start your kit. 1 item a week builds momentum. A flashlight this week, a water jug next week. By the end of the year, you'll have more than most. And finally, introduce yourself to your neighbor, especially if they're older, isolated, or new to the area. Ask, what's your plan if we lose power? You might be surprised just how much you can learn from one another. Because preparedness isn't about panic. It's about connection. It's about building trust before the ground starts to shake. Print this episode's key links and stick them to your fridge, or take a photo of them while you still have battery. And remember, when disaster hits, it's not just the stuff in the backpack that saves you. It's also the people beside you. Before I go, here's a 3-minute home hazard hunt that you can do this week. It costs a little more than time, prevents injuries, and matters just as much as what's in your kit. Hazards in our homes are frequently overlooked as they often become part of our everyday life. Step 1. Find your safe spots. In every room, point to one place you can drop, cover, and hold on. Under a sturdy table, beside an interior wall away from glass, or maybe next to a solid bed frame. If you can't name one, that's your cue to rearrange things around. Step 2. Shoes by the bed. After quakes, cuts from broken glass are common. Make sure to park a pair of closed-toe shoes and a small flashlight in a bag tied to your bed frame. Step 3. Tall furniture. Bookshelves, tall drawers, and that big plant shelf. Anchor them to studs with 2 brackets. If you rent, use existing holes or removable anchors where possible. And make sure to talk to your landlord before making any major changes. 4. TV and monitors. Use anti-tip straps or low-profile wall mounts. Falling screens? Those equal head injuries. 5. Kitchen cabinets. Add child safety latches to upper cabinets with glasses or heavy dishes. During the shaking of an earthquake, those doors will swing open. Step 6. Move heavy items down low. Move cast iron pans, big books, storage bins, and anything else super heavy that might fall. Your toes will thank you. Step 7. Nightstand checklist. Stash a whistle, a portable phone charger, and your medication list in your top drawer. If you use hearing aids or glasses, that's their spot at night as well. 8. Gas, water, and electric. Everyone in the household should know where to shut off water, how to flip the main breaker, and where the gas meter is. If you're not sure about gas, learn first. Contact your provider for specific details and don't guess. 9. Doorways and exits. Keep one path clear. No stacked boxes by the hallway. No bikes blocking the stairwell. In apartments, don't store anything in common corridors. Always make sure you have a clear path to the exit. 10. Create an underbed backup kit. Slide a shoebox with a headlamp, light gloves, a small first aid kit, and a few granola bars under each bed. That's your grab-and-go backup kit. This isn't about perfection, it's about preventing the easy injuries that often occur so you can help others. If you want an easy win this weekend, choose 2 rooms, fix 2 hazards, and text a neighbor to do the same. That's community resilience, one bracket at a time. Coming up next, Madison shares stories of Indigenous-led emergency systems.
Thanks, Finley, for that very important information. When we talk about disaster preparedness, it's vital to hear Indigenous voices. In British Columbia, First Nations are driving resilience efforts grounded in their relationship to territory, tradition, and knowledge. One foundational document is the Action Plan for Disaster Risk Reduction by First Nations in BC. Created by and for First Nations, this plan outlines how communities can reduce disaster risks, build capacity, and reclaim agency over emergency response. The development of this action plan was a collaborative and inclusive process, engaging First Nations communities, leaders, and experts in disaster risk reduction and emergency management. They have considered context-specific issues, recognizing the diversity of their regions, whether coastal, northern, urban, or rural, and emphasize the importance of solutions that are locally driven. This action plan emphasizes community engagement, capacity building, and strategic partnership as key drivers in enhancing readiness to face the challenges that lie ahead. A reminder to our listeners that you can find all links to resources shared in this episode in our show notes. The BC government hosts a hub for Indigenous climate resources to support actions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help prepare and adapt to climate change. They also have toolkits like the Indigenous Climate Action Toolkit, Climate Hub, First Nations Integrated Watershed Planning, as well as training and funding guides designed for Indigenous communities. There is also the BC First Nations Climate Strategy and Action Plan that integrates resilience, food sovereignty, ecosystem stewardship, and healing. The FNLC coordinated the development of this plan in collaboration with the First Nations in BC to ensure First Nations title, rights, and treaty rights were asserted and protected in addressing climate change. First Nations knowledge, laws, legal processes, and worldviews were recognized and implemented in climate planning and response, and effective and immediate responses to the climate emergency were identified to reduce impacts and vulnerability within and across communities. If you want to explore, I urge you to visit these resources online by searching BC First Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Plan. On Vancouver Island, many First Nations have been building community-specific emergency plans that reflect their realities. From wildfire evacuation routes to cultural safety protocols to partnerships that actually work. Let's start with the Sunamo First Nation. Located within the Nanaimo area, they've been partnered with the City of Nanaimo and Emergency Management BC to develop evacuation protocols, sandbag stations, and First Nation-led roles. And this comes from the City of Nanaimo plan that was produced in 2023. The 2021 heat dome exposed a glaring gap. Many community members with chronic illnesses, disabilities, or mobility limitations were overlooked in evacuation and transport planning. That is a gap that Indigenous-led plans are striving to fill, particularly by prioritizing vulnerable populations in community protocols. Another example is the Indigenous Services Canada's Emergency Management Assistance Program, what we'll refer to as EMAP. This program offers funding to First Nations communities to build resiliency, prepare for natural hazards, and respond, structured around the 4 pillars of emergency management of mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. This program is in partnership with First Nation communities, provincial and territorial governments, and non-governmental organizations. EMAP aims to be flexible, culturally sensitive, responsive to the unique strengths and customs of First Nation communities, and adaptive to the evolving challenges resulting from emergency events. Fire-smart initiatives like training opportunities, emergency management plan development and testing, tsunami preparedness, all hazard risk assessments, fire prevention, and preparedness capacity building with program partners. EMAP reimburses response and recovery activities like wildfires, floods, storms, earthquakes, and health emergencies. Between April 1st, 2014 and March 31st, 2024, statistics about wildland fire and flood evacuation show that 127,000 First Nations peoples on reserves have faced temporary evacuations, including long-term evacuations, and defines long-term evacuees as people who have been evacuated for more than 2 months. Further north, the Kaleo-Kuat First Nation has developed their own tribal emergency plan, focused not just on response, but recovery and healing. That includes designated cultural sites, trauma-informed family reunification, and sacred fire spaces after evacuations. And this comes from the First Nations Emergency Services Society in 2023. These plans are rooted in values of relational responsibility, not just me and mine, but us and ours mindsets. Did you know? During the 2021 Lytton fire at the Nlat Kap elders led their community's response, organizing safe zones, coordinating travel, and even identifying routes emergency planners had missed. This information comes from the Indigenous Climate Hub in 2022. They didn't have fancy apps. They had oral history and lived knowledge. Indigenous peoples are not waiting for rescue. They are leading with resilience, sovereignty, and systems that work for their people. If you are non-Indigenous and live near or on Indigenous territory, like Nanaimo or Port Alberni, here is what you can do. Learn the nation whose land you're on and acknowledge it. Read their emergency plan if public and find ways to align yours with it. Build relationships before the crisis. Offer listening. I encourage our listeners that if you would like to go deeper, please check out the following resources. First Nations Emergency Services Society of BC, and this is fness.ca, the First Nations Health Authority, particularly the Emergency Management Portal, or the Indigenous Climate Hub, and you can find community preparedness stories here. As we've said before, preparedness is relational, and the strongest plans come from those who've survived and rebuilt before. Thank you for listening. My name is Madison, and I'm going to pass off the next segment to Anna.
Thanks, Madison. What you've said has really hit home about how safety and connection come from knowing where we are, not just what we own. Because being prepared isn't just about having a bin of supplies, it's about recognizing that not everyone starts from the same place. Some of us rent apartments without storage. Some live paycheck to paycheck. Some rely on mobility devices, medication, or transit that might not run when we need it the most. Preparedness is about equity too, making sure that no one's left behind when things get hard. In this next part, we're going to move from the big picture to practical, specific steps for specific types of emergencies. These are things that come directly from Prepared BC and their specific emergency guides that keep us safe during wildfires, floods, heat waves, quakes. And for anyone listening right now, picture where you live and think, what would this look like for me on my block, in my building, in my life? Let's start for one that comes without warning. Earthquakes and tsunamis. First thing, drop, cover, and hold on. Drop down to your hands and knees before you're thrown down. Cover your head and neck and hold on until the shaking stops. If you're in bed, stay there. Pull a pillow over your head. If you're outside, move away from power lines, buildings. Just try to be spatially aware. Afterwards, take a second to breathe, then check for injuries and hazards, things like fire, gas leaks, down wires. Text, don't call. Lines might be jammed. If you live on the east coast of the island, tsunamis are a bit of a lesser threat. If you're listening from the west coast of the island or anywhere on an inlet, or you have plans to travel to somewhere in a tsunami zone, then this can apply to you. If you're near the coast and you feel a long or strong quake, don't wait for a siren. Move uphill, at least 10 meters above sea level. Go on foot, bring your pets. If you're visiting a place that has the threat of tsunami, it doesn't hurt to take a look at a map of the area and see where those high zones might be. This might happen in the middle of the night and you want to know exactly where higher ground is. You can also keep go bag by your bed, a flashlight, a whistle, sturdy shoes, copy of ID, and meds. Those few items make a difference in the first 10 minutes after a quake. So the next specific emergency is wildfire. Wildfires aren't just a rural issue. They've hit suburbs and small towns all over BC. If you rent, talk to your landlord or strata about defensible space and fire smart plans. When an alert comes, it's not time to wait and see. It's time to pack and prepare. Close all your windows, bring your pets in, and set a grab-and-go bag for everyone in your home. If you get an order, which is different than an alert, leave right away. Smoke moves faster than flames, and emergency crews cannot always reach you in time. For folks who don't drive, plan a ride now, not later. Ask a friend, a neighbor, or your local emergency office about community shuttles that would exist during evacuation. Afterwards, check air quality before heading outside. If you can still smoke, it's still not safe. Next, we'll go over extreme heat. Extreme heat has hit Vancouver Island before. It hits hardest for people who live alone, on upper floors, or without air conditioning. To check your space to make sure it's emergency prepared, start by identifying the coolest room in your home. Is it a basement, a bathroom, or any shaded spots? Keep your blinds closed by 10 a.m. to trap cool air. Drink water every hour, even if you don't feel thirsty. Wear light clothing. If you stop sweating or feel disoriented, that's an emergency. Call for help. If your place gets dangerously hot, 30 degrees or more, look for community cooling centers. Every municipality lists them online, and libraries often double as cooling spaces. Check on others too. Heat kills silently. Older adults, people on certain meds, and unhoused neighbors are at greatest risk. Preparedness means looking up from our own doorstep. So the next emergency is something we don't get often here on the Central Island, but it does occur from time to time. And because it's a bit rare, people tend to be a little less prepared for it, and that's winter storms. We get a lot of wind here, but when it snows, people here on the Central Island often don't have winter tires or shovels or brushes for their car. Winter storms slow everyone down. The power goes out, roads close, pipes freeze. Before the season hits, stock rock salt or sand, wrap outdoor pipes, and make sure you have food and meds to last at least 3 days. If you have to travel, pack an emergency car kit, which includes a blanket, snacks, flashlight, first aid, and a candle in a tin. That candle can actually keep you warm in a car for hours. And when the power's out, avoid indoor candle use. Use flashlights instead. And again, check on older adults or folks using electric mobile devices. Outages hit them hardest. After the storm, shovel in short bursts and clear the fire hydrant near your house. Check in on a neighbor and see if they need help doing that too. This is how communities protect each other. Next up is flooding. Flooding can hit fast. Before the storm, clear drains and gutters, move chemicals and electronics off the floor, and store valuables upstairs. If an alert is issued, unplug appliances and prepare to shut off gas and power. If you're told to evacuate, never drive through water. 6 inches is all it takes to sweep a car downstream. If you rely on transit, check ahead. Some routes flood first. Keep a small waterproof pouch with ID, insurance, and health cards. And after the water recedes, don't rush in. Take photos for insurance, wear gloves and boots, and don't use tap water until officials confirm it's safe. Just wanted to remind listeners that you're listening to A Sound Constitution, and we are going over emergencies today and how you and your family and friends and neighborhood can prepare. I'm Anna, and we'll continue by talking about how to prepare for landslides. We do have some terrain that could slide here on the island. Landslides often give warning, though. There's cracks in the ground, leaning trees, new springs. If you hear rumbling or a creek suddenly changes color, move uphill immediately. Inside, go to your upper floors and away from windows. If you're outside, run uphill and out of the slide's path. Stay clear afterwards. Slides can happen in waves. And remember, reporting what you see can help everyone downstream. And so this has been a broad overview of some emergency preparedness for various different emergencies, but now we're going to look at some specific situational preparedness. So say you live in a condo or an apartment. In one of these types of buildings, emergencies might feel different. You might not be able to control your building structure or exits, but you can control your plan. Know the location of any stairwell and try to know who lives on your floor. Keep a small stair bag with snacks, water, flashlight, and ID. Never use the elevator in an emergency. If you have mobility limits, tell your building manager so that they know who to assist during evacuations. Preparedness here isn't about stockpiling, it's about relationship. Who's checking on who when the power goes out? If you have mobility needs, emergencies are harder when the systems around you aren't built for you. That's why inclusive planning matters. Start with a personal plan. Write down what you need every day. Is that meds, medical gear, or supports? Let someone that you trust know where that plan is. Keep extra batteries, chargers, or backup equipment in your kit. It's great if you can to create a buddy network too of at least 3 people that know your plan. Label your equipment and service animal gear with your name and do not separate. If you communicate differently through a device or a sign, keep a laminated page explaining how to help you. This is equity. Everyone deserves to be safe. Finally, we'll just touch upon what to do for your furry family, pet preparedness. A lot of times the pets feel disasters before the humans do. They generally depend on their human owners completely. So keep a crate or carrier ready with food, water, and vet records. Add a cloth or a blanket that smells like home. Take a photo of you with your pet. It's proof of ownership if you get separated. If you evacuate, bring your animals. Don't leave them behind. For larger animals like horses or livestock, plan transport well ahead of time. Write down where they go and who can help. Knowing in your neighborhood or in neighboring communities who has space for animals in times of emergency is really good planning. Emergencies don't wait for convenience, and planning ahead keeps everyone calm, including them. Preparedness isn't about perfection. It's about making the best plan you can with what you have and refusing to leave people behind if it's safe to do so. Just a reminder to print or download the Prepared BC guides. If you go to Prepared BC online, they have all kinds of guides in many different languages for all different kinds of scenarios. So to have those prepared ahead of time can really help in an emergency. Especially talk to your neighbors, your coworkers, and your family. Ask the question, who's most at risk here and what can we do about it together? When emergencies hit, they test the strength of our connections more than our supplies, and preparedness is social justice in action. It's how we close these gaps before the next crisis opens them. To close today's episode, we want to leave you with a story that shows just how much community can shape resilience. The following is a TEDx talk excerpt from Dr. Lucy Ozanne, a researcher from New Zealand who studies how everyday people work together to recover after disasters. When an earthquake struck her hometown of Lyttelton, she found that what saved them wasn't luck, it was community. So please join us to see what made Lyttelton so strong and how the same spirit of connection can guide us here on Vancouver Island.
On September 2010 and February 2011, Christchurch, New Zealand was hit by 2 large earthquakes. I want to share with you our story of recovery. This is a story of community resilience, how we bounce back. What I hope to convey to you today is not just what we did, but more importantly, one of the secrets of how we did it. Days after the September earthquake, our medical center was swamped with calls from residents who were okay medically, but really, really scared. Within hours, members of the community organized a group to call, stop by, or comfort 156 frightened neighbors in their 70s and 80s. When help was needed after a large aftershock hit, this care was offered again. Research consistently finds that during disasters, people help one another, and we certainly experienced this in Christchurch. What is surprising is how quickly and effectively this community was able to act. How come the residents of Lyttelton were able to put together a coordinated response with seemingly little effort? After the second earthquake, an elderly couple, Marg and Harry, were found wandering the streets of Lyttelton, their home of 30 years destroyed by the earthquakes. But again, very quickly, members of the community organized a caring network around Marg and Harry. This caring network found them temporary lodging, They organized a chain of volunteers in the fire brigade to carry a lifetime of possessions from their home. They found them a new home, cleaned it up, moved them in, and even arranged for hot meals to be delivered. And they continued to check on them for many months after. Now, Marg and Harry weren't particularly well known. Their story wasn't widely publicized. So why did the people of Littleton work so hard to embrace and care for them? Are the people in Littleton just so incredibly nice, or was something else going on here? Now, as a researcher, I'm fascinated by stories like these, but it can be difficult to pinpoint why one community behaves differently from another. But in this instance, I had an advantage. I had been studying the community of Littleton for many months before the earthquakes occurred. I knew their history and I knew their secret. My colleague and I began to do field research in Littleton in 2009. I study how consumers get their needs met in alternative sharing economies. In Littleton, we were studying a time bank, an alternative currency. We were intrigued by the time bank. Neighbors appeared to be swapping their labor for free. What were they doing? And more importantly, why were they doing this? Now, time banking is both an old and a new idea. People have always swapped and bartered their labor to help one another. But a time bank is a form of community currency where people use time rather than money as the medium of exchange. People describe time banking as good fun because they tend to trade the skills they really enjoy doing, arts and crafts, music, or cooking. But they also earn hours by helping out at the farmer's market, volunteering in school, or offering to clean up the beach. Time banking is unique in that everyone's hour is equal in value. An hour equals an hour, regardless of the skill that's being offered. Time banks are also useful because we can quickly mobilize a lot of labor to solve the problems we care about. So all of these characteristics make time banking a valuable tool for any community. But what we also found was the Littleton Time Bank was building capacities that the community could use in a disaster. 4 capacities were key. The community needed to be able to effectively communicate, work together, share a common culture, and solve problems. Let me give you just a small taste of each of these. Turns out when a disaster occurs, information is a really important shared asset. But people don't have time to verify that information, so they turn to trusted sources. The time bank coordinator was a trusted source. Her regular emails were always feel-good communications. In the 4 years we tracked, there was never a negative message among them. They were always upbeat, positive, and encouraging. As one informant told me, they gave her a warm buzz just reading them. And the time bank also had the best communication network in town. So when the earthquakes occurred, it mobilized this communication capacity. The time bank coordinator, was invited into the emergency briefings with the official responders, and then she updated a notice board with information critical for the whole town. Time bankers also staffed the information center, and they invited residents in, get critical information, to share a cuppa or just a sympathetic. But most importantly, this communication capacity was used to mobilize the social capacity. Prior to the disasters, the Time Bank was becoming an important hub organization, linking hundreds of people together in the town. The network had over 300 members, 18 organizations were members, and these people had traded an astonishing 30,000 hours. Just imagine the dense network of social ties they were creating and activating. As one informant told me, the Time Bank created networks within networks that ripple out into the community. Or another said it gave her a larger family to call on, especially after her husband died. When the earthquakes occurred, it mobilized this social capacity, linking people and locating resources. So when refrigeration and generators were needed, the Time Bank members found these resources. When people needed emergency repairs, the Time Bank network created a system to link them with tradespeople. When rubble needed to be cleared, Time Bank members were asked. And with so many damaged homes, the Time Bank network found people safe places to stay. The social network continued to meet the needs of the community over the long years of rebuilding. We also found that the Time Bank was fostering its own unique culture with values that supported it. As one informant described to me, the Time Bank was like a neighborhood wellness watch. or a community where everyone looks out for one another, a community where it's okay to ask for help and assistance, and a community where everyone's labor is equal in value. This shared culture united people in the disaster. Research suggests that communities that recover more quickly from disaster maintain their rituals and tell stories of survival. The Time Bank mobilized this cultural capacity and held regular gatherings to celebrate our resilience. To commemorate the anniversary of the first earthquake, it held a gathering to stitch hero medals. It held regular events on the street, swapping events to bring people together and get them out of their home. It held a series of educational classes. Finally, we found that the Time Bank was developing a sense of collective efficacy, or a belief that we can solve the problems we have if we work together. Members were identifying projects, large and small, that required labor and coordination. Members would show up, they'd assess the situation, they'd tap into the expertise in the group, and then they would work to solve the problem. This ability to quickly form effective working groups was particularly useful in the immediate aftermath of the disaster, but also over the long years of rebuilding. The Time Bank worked because it helped individuals in the community to bounce back, to be resilient. The Time Bank worked because it drew on deep pools of skills and labor. It had redundancy so it could last the long years of rebuilding. It worked because it developed and practiced capacities before the disaster struck. It worked because it fostered a culture that valued everyone's labor. And it worked because it created the networks of caring that the residents of Littleton could call on when the unimaginable. The United Nations points to the need to develop community capacity and encourage community participation in disaster and preparedness and response. Yet tools to enable this to happen are less clear. Our data points to time banks, an alternative currency, as a secret weapon to enable communities to respond and prepare when disasters strike. Thank you.
That story from Dr. Lucy Ozanne reminds us that preparedness isn't just about kits or checklists. It's about the ties between people. When we invest in those connections now, we build the capacity to care for one another when the unthinkable happens. Thank you so much for listening to A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM. You can find all of today's resources and links in our show notes, and we'll see you next week on Thursday from 2 to 3.
Thank you for listening. For details and show notes from today's episode, or to follow along on what's coming up this season, check out our Facebook page, A Sound Constitution, or our Instagram at CHLY A Sound Constitution. If you missed today's episode, or if you'd like to listen to one of our previous episodes, check us out on Spotify or YouTube at A Sound Constitution. We want to remind our listeners that the information presented in this show is for educational purposes only and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. Thanks again, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.